People like to believe they make their own choices, yet most decisions begin long before the moment they appear. They rise from subtle cues, quiet expectations, and the invisible pressure of what feels normal. This hidden structure shapes people far more than direct orders ever could, because it works beneath awareness. Machiavelli understood that the strongest form of control is the one no one notices, the one that feels natural. When something feels natural, people do not resist it. They align with it, trusting what seems familiar. This is where real influence begins, not with force, but with the quiet shaping of perception. Most people react to the world without questioning the origins of their thoughts, making them easy to guide. They follow patterns they never chose, repeat beliefs they never examined, and mirror behaviors they barely understand. Once you see these hidden currents, people appear less unpredictable and far more mechanical. You begin to notice how fear pulls them, how comfort softens them, and how approval directs them. Their reactions become patterns, their choices become echoes, and their resistance fades the moment something feels familiar. You realize control is not a battle, but a design, shaped slowly, patiently, through the expectations you set. People lean toward the environment that feels safest, the voice that feels certain, and the presence that feels steady. Even silence can guide them if it carries confidence, because people read meaning into everything you do not say. This is why those who appear calm and certain often hold more influence than those who demand attention. People look to them instinctively, sensing stability even when nothing is said. Machiavelli knew that authority begins long before a command is spoken. It begins in the mind of the observer. Perception shifts subtly when someone feels your steadiness deeply. Every person carries a quiet desire to be led, even if they insist on their independence. Some crave protection, some crave direction, and others simply want someone who appears more certain than they feel. This longing rarely shows on the surface, yet it shapes reactions more than logic ever will. People seek anchors in a world that feels unstable, and they gravitate toward those who offer clarity. Even the strongest personalities look for reassurance, though they hide it behind confidence or noise. When someone senses calm authority in you, they naturally ease into your rhythm without realizing it. Their mind searches for cues, for signs that you know what you're doing, because certainty is rare, and when they find it, they lean in, allowing your presence to guide their thoughts without resistance. This pattern is not manipulation, it is a natural pull created by confidence, clarity, and emotional steadiness. People follow what feels stronger than their own uncertainty, and they surrender small decisions to those they trust. Once this begins, influence becomes effortless because they are already looking to you for direction. The moment they rely on your presence, they open a path for your guidance to shape their choices. Quietly, Machiavelli understood that the key to controlling people lies not in studying their strengths, but in recognizing the flaws they try to hide. Strengths are predictable, visible, and often rehearsed, but weaknesses reveal how a person can be moved. People guard their strengths proudly, yet their fears, insecurities, and unmet desires silently guide their decisions. When you understand what someone avoids, what they crave, and what they cannot risk losing, their behavior becomes transparent. Machiavelli saw human nature as a mixture of fear and longing, and he knew that these forces shape actions far more than logic. People rarely move from pure intention. They move from pressure, from desire, or from the need to protect their image. Once you see the fears beneath confidence or the insecurity beneath arrogance, you understand what directs them. This shift creates quiet power because you stop reacting to their surface and start responding to their core. You no longer get pulled into their emotions. Instead, you watch how their weaknesses shape the choices they present. This calm understanding makes your presence feel heavier, more grounded, because you see what they cannot admit. And when you see what someone cannot admit, you hold the advantage. People rarely respond to truth. They respond to what looks true. This is why the person who appears confident is trusted more than the person who actually has answers, and why the one who speaks with calm certainty gains loyalty even when they know less. People rely on perception to navigate uncertainty, and whoever shapes that perception quietly gains control. When you understand this, you stop trying to convince others with explanations and start guiding them with presence. Appearance becomes a tool, not a mask. You decide what people see, and through that, you decide how they behave around you. Most people never question the image someone presents, because questioning requires effort. They accept the version of you that is easiest to understand, and once that image settles, it becomes their truth. This gives you a distance from their emotions, because you no longer engage in their expectations, you design them. When you hold yourself with steadiness, people assume confidence. When you speak less, they assume depth. When you act without hesitation, they assume strength. These assumptions work in your favor because they are born from their own desires, not your claims. People want someone who seems composed, certain, and grounded, and when you become that image, they begin to follow it. You gain influence not by proving yourself, but by allowing their perception to fill in the gaps. And the more they fill in those gaps, the more they trust what they believe they see. There is a certain power in not being fully understood. People are drawn to what they cannot predict, because unpredictability creates a quiet tension in their mind. They watch more closely, think more deeply, and invest more energy trying to figure you out. Machiavelli understood this instinct well. When someone becomes too obvious, others stop paying attention. But when someone is slightly unpredictable, never chaotic, just unreadable, they become fascinating. People lean in without realizing it, trying to decode your intention. This creates a natural authority, because attention always moves toward the person who cannot be easily mapped. Controlled unpredictability is not about behaving wildly. It's about breaking patterns at the right moments. You stay calm, composed, steady, and then act in a way they didn't expect, just enough to reset their assumptions. This keeps people alert, and alert people are easier to guide because they rely on your cues more carefully. When they cannot predict your next move, they wait for it, and in that waiting, you create influence. They adjust their behavior to match yours, hoping to stay aligned with your intentions. This places you in the psychological center of their attention. The key is balance. Too much predictability makes you forgettable. Too much unpredictability makes you unstable. But a controlled blend creates presence. You become someone people cannot ignore, not because you demand attention, but because your silence carries depth, and your actions break patterns just enough to spark curiosity. Over time, this makes your authority feel natural. People follow those who make them think, who make them pause, who make them feel slightly uncertain, yet strangely drawn in. When you master this tension, you shape how others move around you. People trust what is consistent, yet they respect what is difficult to read. This is why the strongest individuals hold two versions of themselves: the steady public presence and the private mind that shifts strategy without warning. When your outward behavior remains calm and predictable, people feel safe around you. They know how you carry yourself, how you handle pressure, and how you respond. This stability builds trust effortlessly, because consistency creates comfort. But consistency in public does not mean exposing your inner workings. Your plans, intentions, and calculations stay hidden, changing as needed without explanation. This separation protects your power, because no one can anticipate a strategy they never see. You become layered. People see the outer shell, reliable, grounded, but they never gain access to the shifting thoughts beneath it. This makes you appear simple, yet feel complex, approachable, yet untouchable. The less people know about your internal decisions, the more control you keep over your direction. And because your public actions remain steady, no one suspects the adjustments happening behind your silence. This dual-layered approach creates a psychological advantage. You stay flexible while appearing constant, and this combination makes you difficult to oppose. No one can prepare for a move they do not expect, and no one challenges someone who radiates stability. Over time, this makes your influence feel inevitable. You become the person others rely on, while never revealing why you make the choices you make. This blend of consistency and secrecy is what makes someone quietly powerful. People like to believe that their choices come from principle, reason, or a clear sense of right and wrong. Yet when you watch closely, you see a different pattern. Most decisions are shaped by reward: social reward, emotional reward, financial reward, or the simple reward of feeling important. Logic becomes a decoration people use afterward to justify what they already wanted. Morality becomes a story they tell themselves to feel noble. Underneath both lies the same motive: what does this give me? Once you understand this, people's behavior stops feeling confusing. You stop taking their reactions personally. You stop expecting consistency. You begin to see the engine behind everything they do. A person will abandon a long-held belief if it benefits them. They will change their values if it opens a door. Even loyalty bends the moment reward shifts direction. This is not cynicism, it's human nature. And when you accept it, you rise above the emotional fog that traps most people. Instead of wondering why someone acted a certain way, you look at what they stood to gain. Instead of feeling disappointed, you analyze incentives. The hurt disappears, replaced by clarity. Machiavelli understood this truth with cold accuracy. If you want to influence someone, speak to their reward, not their logic. Give them a path that benefits them, and they will walk it willingly. Appeal to principles alone, and they will ignore you the moment something more tempting appears. When you look at people through this lens, you stop being pulled by their moods or contradictions. You understand the simple equation beneath their choices, and once you see that equation, you hold the advantage, because you are no longer swayed by the illusions that bind them. People follow opportunity more quickly than they follow orders, and sometimes more eagerly than they follow their own intuition. Opportunity has a magnetic pull. It makes the mind imagine, project, and hope is a powerful motivator. When you create the appearance of opportunity, even a subtle one, people begin to move in the direction you want without realizing they are being guided. They believe it's their idea. They believe they're choosing freely. That sense of autonomy makes influence effortless. The key lies in shaping perception, not in giving promises. You don't have to offer something concrete. You only need to make people feel that something valuable might be within reach. A hint, a suggestion, a quiet possibility. The mind fills in the rest. People move toward potential reward with more energy than they move toward guaranteed reward, because the unknown carries excitement. It activates imagination, and imagination does most of the work for you. When you present a path with subtle benefits, more status, more access, more recognition, people begin to align themselves with your direction. They adjust their behavior to match the version of themselves they hope to become. You are not pushing them. You are shaping the environment that pulls them. This is how silent architects operate. They create conditions that make certain choices feel natural and others feel less appealing. Eventually, people believe they arrived at the decision independently. They take ownership of the action, which deepens their commitment. This is the real power of perceived opportunity. It makes others follow you while thinking they are following themselves. And when someone feels ownership of a choice, they rarely resist the consequences. Instead, they continue moving along the path you designed. Desire grows in the space between wanting and receiving. Too much giving weakens that space. It softens the intensity that makes people value you. Machiavelli understood that the fastest way to lose influence is to make yourself too accessible, too generous, or too predictable. When someone feels they can always have your attention, your time, or your resources, they start to take those things for granted. What is abundant loses its weight. What is rare becomes powerful. Subtle deprivation is not cruelty. It is the art of keeping your value sharp. You offer enough to maintain connection, but not enough to satisfy fully. You create small gaps, quiet pauses, slight distance. These gaps activate desire. People lean forward. They wonder, they hope, they wait. That waiting binds them far more strongly than constant giving ever could. When someone receives everything they want, their mind grows calm. When they receive almost everything, their mind stays engaged. This approach also reveals who is truly invested. Those who stay only when you overextend yourself were never with you only with the benefits. But those who remain interested despite limited access are moved by something deeper, the pull of desire. And desire is where influence lives. When you combine consistency with controlled scarcity, your presence becomes something people work for. They adjust to your rhythm. They reshape their behavior to stay connected. They give more than they receive, believing the next moment of access will bring satisfaction. This is why restraint is more powerful than generosity. Generosity fulfills. Restraint ignites. When you master that balance, you gain a form of influence that feels effortless, because people attach themselves to the very thing they feel they almost have. When you detach from your emotions, the world becomes quieter. You stop reacting to every tone, every shift in someone's mood, every subtle attempt to provoke you. Most people live on an emotional leash, pulled back and forth by whatever feeling strikes them in the moment. This makes them predictable and easy to influence. Fear controls them. Approval guides them. Anger blinds them. But when you learn to step back from your emotions, everything sharpens. You begin to see intentions instead of expressions, patterns instead of impulses, motives instead of noise. Detachment is not coldness. It is clarity. It frees you from the traps others set without even knowing they've set them. People try to manipulate through pressure, urgency, guilt, or flattery. These tactics only work on someone who reacts instantly. The moment you pause, the trap breaks. When you are not ruled by the need to please or defend yourself, you become difficult to move. Instead of being pushed, you observe. Instead of being triggered, you analyze. This frustrates manipulators because they cannot find a grip upon you. Emotional distance also protects your judgment. Decisions made in anger or desperation always cost more later. When you step back, you make choices from reason, not reaction. You stop sinking into drama and start rising above it. People sense this shit. They feel your calmness as something heavy, something grounded, and without realizing it, they start adjusting to your tone. This is why emotional detachment is a foundation of power. It creates a center within you that external chaos cannot reach. From that center, you see more, you react less, and you become someone whose presence feels controlled, steady, and unshakable. Chaotic people thrive on pulling others into their storm. They raise their voice, escalate tension, or project urgency because they want company in their emotional chaos. The moment you step into that chaos, they win. But when you remain calm, their power collapses. Calmness is not passive. It is dominance without force. It exposes the instability of the other person by contrasting it with your restraint. When someone yells and you stay steady, their outburst feels loud, unfocused, and weak. Your silence becomes the stronger expression. Most people try to overpower emotion with more emotion. They argue harder, explain louder, demand understanding. This only feeds the chaos. But when you refuse to match their energy, you take control of the dynamic. Chaotic people cannot operate without reaction. They depend on your response for momentum. When you give them nothing, they lose shape. Their attempts to provoke you begin to look desperate. Their confidence cracks. And without ever raising your voice, you position yourself as the authority in the interaction. Calmness also controls the pace of the situation. Emotional people rush, they push, they try to force decisions. But your calmness slows everything down, creating a rhythm they must follow. You become the metronome that sets the tone. This is a subtle form of leadership, steady, quiet, undeniable. Over time, this calm authority becomes part of your presence. Others sense it the moment you walk into a room. They look to you during tension because your composure stabilizes them. You become the grounding force they rely on, not because you demanded respect, but because you showed control when they lost theirs. In volatile environments, that steadiness becomes your greatest weapon. Silence unsettles people more than aggression. When someone confronts you, they expect resistance. They expect anger, defense, excuses, something they can push against. But when you respond with silence, you give them nothing to grab onto. They fill the empty space with their own uncertainty. They start questioning themselves, softening their stance, or revealing more than they intended. Silence becomes pressure, not absence. It forces the other person to face their own emotions without your participation. Most people cannot tolerate silence. They rush to explain themselves, justify their actions, or demand clarity. This urgency exposes their motives. Meanwhile, you remain still, watching, letting the moment stretch. In that stretch, power shifts. Your lack of reaction makes you appear composed, confident, and unreachable. Their words grow weaker as they try to draw you into engagement, but your restraint communicates more than argument ever could. Silence also creates mystery. People project meaning onto it, often imagining something stronger than reality. They assume you know more, feel more, or see more than you reveal. This assumption elevates your presence. You appear deeper, more calculated, more in control, and because they cannot read you, they tread carefully. When used intentionally, silence becomes a strategic pause that unsettles aggression, redirects attention, and reinforces your dominance without a single word. It is the opposite of confrontation, yet it achieves far more. People eventually adjust their tone, offer concessions, or reveal vulnerabilities simply to break the tension you created. This is the quiet power of minimalism. Instead of wasting energy proving your point, you let silence carry the weight, and in that stillness, you become someone others cannot easily challenge, because they cannot predict what you're thinking or what you might do next. Kindness is often mistaken for weakness, but when applied strategically, it becomes a form of subtle control. People naturally gravitate toward those who make them feel valued, understood, or protected. By offering warmth and consideration, you create bonds that feel voluntary, not forced. Generosity that appears natural encourages loyalty without the recipient realizing they are being guided. This is the difference between giving to be liked and giving to shape influence. The first fades over time. The second endures because it creates dependency grounded in respect and appreciation. When you act with strategic kindness, every gesture carries weight. A thoughtful word, a small favor, a moment of genuine attention becomes a signal that you are attentive, reliable, and in control. People begin to anticipate your guidance, your judgment, or your involvement, and they attach attach themselves to it. They start adjusting behavior to stay aligned with your approval or presence without ever feeling manipulated. True mastery lies in subtlety. Kindness must feel effortless, not calculated. It cannot be doled out as a tool for overt gain, or it loses credibility. But when combined with quiet confidence and clear boundaries, kindness binds people to you more effectively than force or argument ever could. They follow you because they feel a pull, not because they are coerced. Over time, this strategic warmth positions you as someone who shapes their environment simply by existing within it. People want your attention, your guidance, your support. They begin to move in ways that serve your objectives without your speaking a single directive. Strength is felt more than it is spoken. Words alone rarely command obedience. Actions and boundaries carry far greater weight. People naturally test limits, and without clearly enforced consequences, they push farther than intended. By setting firm boundaries, you create a structure that others instinctively respect. Controlled severity communicates that you are not to be taken lightly, and it teaches people the cost of overstepping. Consequences do not need to be dramatic or cruel. They only need to be consistent. When a boundary is crossed, a measured response reinforces your position. The key is calibration. Too harsh, and you provoke fear that breeds rebellion or resentment. Too weak, and you invite disrespect. Controlled severity is the balance of authority and fairness, allowing people to feel guided without feeling oppressed. This approach creates a form of psychological tension that others respond to instinctively. They learn to pause before acting, to consider your position, and to internalize the structure you create. Respect becomes automatic, not demanded. People begin to adjust their behavior to align with your expectations because the cost of not doing so is tangible and predictable. Ultimately, boundaries, consequences, and severity signal that your presence carries weight. People recognize that you operate according to rules only you define, and they respond accordingly. Your influence grows because it is experienced rather than requested. They follow because the consequences are real, yet measured, and your authority feels natural, stable, and unshakable. Power is most sustainable when it balances admiration with fear. Admiration creates respect, loyalty, and emotional investment, while fear establishes caution and restraint. Too much admiration without fear invites exploitation. Too much fear without admiration breeds rebellion or avoidance. The subtle art lies in blending the two, so people feel drawn to you while recognizing the boundaries they must never cross. Fear need not be violent or overt. It can emerge from your consistency, your unpredictability, or the sense that you operate according to rules only you understand. People sense that crossing you carries consequences, and that awareness keeps their actions aligned with your expectations. Admiration, on the other hand, stems from your competence, confidence, and strategic generosity. People value your guidance, follow your example, and invest themselves because they respect your mind and your character. When these forces coexist, influence becomes effortless. People move in ways that serve both their desire to gain your approval and their instinct to avoid missteps. They internalize your presence as both a standard and a framework, shaping their behavior without direct intervention. You become the axis around which their choices rotate. This nuanced approach produces stability. People rarely challenge someone who embodies both qualities, because doing so feels risky yet rewarding. Your power feels inevitable and natural, not forced or contrived. Over time, they learn to navigate your presence carefully, consistently, and predictably, while still aspiring to align with your vision. The blend of admiration and fear creates influence that is not brittle. It endures because it is experienced on both emotional and rational level. Mastering this balance allows you to cultivate authority that feels permanent, controlled, and quietly irresistible. Influence does not always need to be visible to be effective. The most powerful people are often those who move events without anyone realizing it. They plant ideas, shape expectations, and guide decisions quietly. Others think they are acting freely, yet the direction has already been set. Embedding yourself as this invisible force begins with observation. You study the group, notice patterns, and identify what motivates each person. You listen more than you speak, but every gesture, glance, or pause carries subtle weight. People begin to align with you without realizing it, because you shape the context in which choices are made. The key is subtlety. You do not force action. You allow it to unfold naturally. By providing options, emphasizing certain possibilities, or highlighting outcomes without dictating them, you steer attention attention and energy toward your desired path. Small shifts in tone, timing, or focus ripple outward, creating effects far beyond what anyone consciously notices. The group moves, decisions form, and priorities emerge as if they were organically chosen. Meanwhile, you remain largely unseen, a steady presence that guides without intrusion. This approach requires patience and precision. It is not about dominating every moment, but about guiding the currents so that others flow in the direction you intend. People will follow your lead because they sense your steadiness, your insight, and your subtle influence. The more invisible you remain, the more power accumulates, because no one resists what they do not see coming. Over time, you become the center around which the environment rotates, shaping outcomes without drawing attention. Narratives control perception. The person who frames the story shapes how others interpret events, assign meaning, and decide how to act. Machiavelli understood that commanding a narrative is far more effective than issuing orders. Suggestion, implication, and the careful release of information allow you to guide thought without appearing controlling. People internalize your guidance because they believe it originated from their own reasoning, yet the structure of the narrative subtly channels their choices. This method relies on influencing the context in which people evaluate decisions, highlight certain facts, downplay others, and let assumptions fill the gaps. When you ask questions instead of giving directives, people fill in answers that align with your intentions. When you emphasize specific possibilities, they naturally lean toward them. Over time, these small nudges build a consistent pattern of direction, and people begin to move as if guided by their own judgment. Control through narrative is elegant because it removes confrontation. You do not have to debate, argue, or demand compliance. Influence becomes almost invisible, woven into the way people perceive reality. Others act, decide, and commit, believing they are autonomous, while you quietly maintain authority over the story that shapes their actions. This is refined power, invisible, seamless, and deeply effective. By mastering suggestion over instruction, you transform leadership from force into guidance. You shape outcomes without resistance, embed your influence in perception, and become a silent architect of every environment you inhabit. People move through your design naturally, leaving you in control while appearing detached. True power is silent. Those who need to display strength often reveal insecurity, while those who act subtly command enduring authority. When influence operates beneath awareness, resistance fades, and control feels effortless. Silence, patience, and observation allow you to shape events without drawing attention to yourself. Dominance, shown openly, is temporary. It must be maintained constantly and invites challenge. Silent mastery, on the other hand, accumulates naturally. People adjust their behavior, align with your expectations, and anticipate your intentions without ever feeling coerced. Your presence becomes a gravitational force, shaping outcomes while remaining largely unseen. When you step back and allow the currents to flow through your design, you realize that power is less about command and more about orchestration. The fewer people recognize your hand in events, the more effective your influence becomes. This quiet control produces a lasting sense of authority, leaving you elevated above distraction, drama, and resistance. Mastery is not loud. It is deliberate, calm, and invisible. The world moves through you without knowing it, and in that realization, you find the deepest form of control or power that requires no display, no assertion, only your steady, unseen presence.